Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today, we're going to be talking about Sherilyn Guerrero, Vickie Guerrero, and Shaul Guerrero, and the Guerrero family sort of drama. So by now, pretty much everyone has seen the 10-minute TikTok put out by Sherilyn Guerrero, who stated that her stepfather sexually assaulted her, and Vickie essentially chose her husband, her new husband, over her daughter. Shaul Guerrero, the older sister of Sherilyn, essentially blocked Shaul in support of Vickie. So now it's essentially Vickie and Sherilyn versus Vickie and Shaul versus Sherilyn in this sort of story. So in the 10-minute TikTok, Sherilyn Guerrero claims that this incident occurred at some point in 2019 or 2020 before the pandemic. The family went on a cruise, and her stepfather, she had been living with Vickie and her stepfather at the time. And while on that cruise, he inappropriately touched her, or as she said, handled her. She told Vickie about this. Vickie essentially denied that it occurred, tried to assure Sherilyn, that nothing was, he didn't mean it, or she was, taking things the wrong way. And she very quickly moved out. At that point, the relationship between Vickie and Sherilyn devolved, and Sherilyn was blocked by Vickie on social media and simply does not speak to her. In support of her mother, Shaul also does not speak to Sherilyn. So I looked up everybody involved, because I was waiting for Vickie to respond, but Vickie is on vacation apparently. Shaul has not responded, not said anything. And I don't really know who the guy is, but he is on vacation with Vickie, so we don't know who he is either. Chavo Guerrero put out a statement basically in support of Sherilyn, so he's on that side. So let's talk about this thing. Let's try to be as serious as possible and also as succinct as possible. From Sherilyn Guerrero's perspective, I can understand what's going, if something traumatic occurred to you, why you would feel the need to unload that burden. The problem with this issue is, one, if it actually occurred, because again, on this channel, people are innocent until proven guilty. We do not know the whole story. I don't know Sherilyn Guerrero personally. I only have her story in which to look at. So it could be more to it that's not there. It could be other things. It could just be not true. We don't know. Now, I don't have any reason to believe that it's not true. I have no reason to believe that it is true other than she said it. From looking around social media, Sherilyn Guerrero seems to be a pretty normal, I think she's 27, so she seemed to be pretty normal. She was a dancer. She had started a business for a short amount of time, and now she basically finding her own way in Houston. She doesn't seem like the type of person who is looking for attention or wants attention or anything of that matter. And she seems to want to do more with her life than just be Eddie Guerrero's daughter, which, is not something that you can knock people for. At the same time, though, in the TikTok, she talked about loving to have a relationship with her sister and her mother. At the same time, she's publicly humiliating them, For young people, a little tidbit of advice. You don't make these things public if you want to in any way reconnect their relationship, because I can pretty much tell you this incentivizes them not to. All right. Anybody who is in a situation where these sort of things happen and you go public talking about it and saying, hey, I was sexually assaulted by my stepfather and my mother chose him over me, that doesn't make your mom look good. And then say, oh, my sister, she chose them over me. That doesn't make your sister look good. Instead, it doesn't give them, the desire to want to speak to you in a positive way to make things right. It incentivizes them. It even reinforces their decision to not speak to you because, now you've gone in public and airing dirty laundry, which is never good, because now you're giving the opportunity for guys like me who don't know you, the guy who works at the gas station, the guy who works at Walmart, all these other people in the world to comment on your personal business when none of us know who you are, none of us know your family, and people are coming out and making judgments. You know, you look at Twitter, you look at Vickie's name, and it's nothing but mud and dust right now. People want her fired from her AEW job. Who knows what's going to happen to her father-in-law? This gentleman, I don't know what he does. He seems to be a man of means or something like that. He could lose his job. He could lose his livelihood because of this. Now, this doesn't mean that there's going to, if you cost Vickie Guerrero her lifestyle, you know, because she seemingly goes on trips and stuff with this guy all the time, that's not going to incentivize her to reconnect with you, because she's already lost one husband, you know, taking another one. She lost one husband to death. You're going to take another one via, you know, either inducing a divorce, you know, or, you know, this guy becomes financially dead because he can't work or whatever. That's a damage that's doing more damage to the relationship, you know. And I'm not saying that, you know, it didn't happen. I'm not even casting any doubt on whether it happened or not. I'm attacking the decision to talk about this publicly. Now, Sherilyn Guerrero talks about, you know, not wanting to protect people who don't protect her, which I get that. I still don't understand why it needs to be publicly. This is why we go to private therapists in closed rooms and we talk about this kind of stuff. By going out in public through TikTok, through Facebook, through Instagram, through Twitter, etc., it does lead people to believe that you're looking for attention, which is, you know, a great deal of currency. And it's a good way to get attention if that's what you want. If you wanted your sister to open up Instagram or whatever and see people attacking her, if you know, to open up, and she doesn't use Twitter, Shaul Guerrero, she doesn't use Twitter. She hasn't used Twitter in months from what I checked. If you want, you know, people to go on their, you know, accounts and look and see people like, look at what your sister is posting, look at what your daughter is posting. If you wanted to get their attention, you got it. But did you get it in a positive way or in a negative way? You got it in a negative way. And they're going to react negatively. Or they're going to do maybe some kind of PR thing, which is probably going to end up with very public mudslinging back and forth. It's not going to be positive. I've never seen anybody get quote unquote ousted publicly and then, you know, seek to make amends, you know, in that way. You know, most of the time when people do make amends, quote unquote, it's privately. You know, when Master P and his son got into it recently, his son was making all kind of public claims. You know, all these claims were made in public. But then when they squashed the beef, it was in private. It's like, okay, well, you could have squashed it in private. You could have talked about this in private. And I don't like that. Even though I understand that this is a serious issue. Now, from Vickie's perspective, like I said earlier, she lost a husband to death. Vickie was single for 10 years before she remarried. In situations like this is a very sensitive subject, because most young women who are going to be sexually assaulted are sexually assaulted in the home by stepfathers. It is I think the vast majority of molestations and violence towards young girls is by stepfathers. And it's quite often happens that the mothers, through, you know, not wanting to be lonely, or if the man has money, not wanting to have access to that. And in Vickie's case, Sherilyn would have been in her early to mid 20s. She would have been college age. So she wasn't exactly like a child or anything like that. And there's a lot of little excuses that Vickie could come up with. I don't suggest she does any of that. I don't suggest she talks about it publicly at all. But there's a lot of people who want her AEW job taken away, even though she wanted to let the contract lapse anyway. She apparently is working with AEW Heels, which is their female Zoom call that they have all the time or something like that. And apparently people want her removed from that space, which is, you know, it is what it is. It just seems like an allegation alone is enough, even though, you know, you don't really get to respond to it. Now, as far as responses go, I don't know what Vickie can possibly say. Like what can she say except either she stands with her husband, she doesn't believe Sherilyn, or, whatever the case may be. Shawl, same thing. She hasn't had much to say. As far as I know, she's a burlesque dancer now. I thought that was like a industry in the 1930s. I didn't know people still liked burlesque dancing, but for those of you who don't know what that is, it's essentially it is dancing around in lingerie, but you don't take it off. Like strippers take clothes off. Burlesque dancers have routines where they're wearing costumes and stuff like that. She did an interview with Chris Van Vliet in 2021. I can't stand Chris Van Vliet, so I didn't listen to it, but I did read the transcription. Shaw Guerrero talked about her mother being her best friend. How close they got when Eddie passed away. So that would kind of explain why, if Sherilyn had, was making a big deal out of things, which would have been around the same time, because Sherilyn claims this incident happened in 2019 or early 2020. And this interview came out in 2021. So Shaw is pretty tight with Vickie. Also, Shaw talked a lot about, having her own issues, her own mental health struggles, her own eating disorders, and all kinds of things that caused her to sort of pull away from the spotlight, to why she quit wrestling and she, went to being a little bit more private in her life. And that's something that needs to be taken into account too, that, Sherilyn is, bringing people, Vickie's already out there. And this is definitely going to affect her in the future, because saying that you're covering for somebody who committed a sexual assault is just as bad in some ways as saying that that person sexually assaulted you. So we're looking at a situation now where Vickie's prospects are damaged, but it probably won't affect Shaw as much, because, she's a dancer in dark rooms. But I just don't see how this is going to fix situations, and there's not much to say, considering we only got one side of the story, and that one side of the story it's not, in any way contradictory, is not what I'm saying, but it's one side of the story. We don't know what the other players may add to the story, what they may deny, what they may agree with. But it is horrifying that she would go through this. It's incredibly sad that Sherilyn Guerrero, if this is true, that she had to go through this. And that hopefully this family can find some type of peace. I don't see that coming, because there's always going to be that resentment that, you embarrassed us and you brought this. And, there's people out there who are going, again, commenting on your life who don't know you. And now they're going to feel carte blanche to say horrible things about you, horrible things to you. And I looked, because I thought this was very interesting. And, Vickie tweeted, I think, back in late March or early April, and then she went on vacation. But if you look at her account, it's nothing but Sherilyn Guerrero's TikTok video and people telling her to call her daughter and people saying, fuck Vickie. And it's very negative, very, very negative. And to me, that seems to be maybe not what Sherilyn wanted people to do, but that's what people do. There aren't people out here who are therapists who want to fix your relationship. This isn't an episode of Karamo. All right. These are people out here who feed on drama, and you just toss them big red meat in the way of a sexual assault story that includes, a rich mother, a rich father, and a daughter. This is awful. So young people should really, really rethink making these things public unless it's absolutely necessary. And I get not wanting to protect people, and you need to get that off your system, get that out of your system. But making it public doesn't seem to help things at all. At least not from what I can tell. It only shows that there's discord in the family, and then it just gives people stuff to talk about, and it kind of brings a lot of sadness. It's very depressing to hear about stuff like this. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. And I'll talk to you guys later.